Welcome to Unfolded Lives, where we bring to life the journeys of those who shaped history. You've probably heard the names before: Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Macbeth, Othello. These aren't just plays, they're deep reflections of human nature: love, power, betrayal, ambition, everything that makes us human, captured with stunning beauty. And the man behind them? William Shakespeare. Now, here's the crazy part: Shakespeare didn't come from money. He didn't go to some elite university. He wasn't born into fame or influence. He was just a regular kid from a small town. But he became the most legendary writer in the English language. So if you're learning English, or if you've ever struggled to find the right words, this is your story too. Because Shakespeare started right where many of us start: ordinary beginnings, big dreams. Let's go back. It was a chilly day in April, 1564. In a quiet English town called Stratford-upon-Avon, a baby was born to John and Mary Shakespeare. They named him William. They had no idea that this tiny boy would one day shape the future of the English language. Stratford wasn't a big city. It was a peaceful little town with narrow streets, timber-framed houses, and a slow-moving river. People worked hard. Some were farmers, some were traders. Others, like William's father, were craftsmen. John Shakespeare was a glove maker. He made high-quality leather gloves and sold them at the local market. He was well respected, a solid figure in the community. Mary, William's mother, came from a well-off farming family. She was strong, loving, and practical, a true pillar for her children. William was the third of 8 kids. You can imagine the noise in that house: laughter, footsteps, chattering voices. It was always alive. But William was different: quiet, observant, curious. He watched everything: how people argued, how they made jokes, how they cried. He didn't know it then, but that habit of observing would one day turn him into the greatest playwright in history. Back then, there were no phones, no movies, no YouTube. People told stories. That's how they entertained themselves. Traveling performers would come through town, acting out plays in the streets. Little William would stand there wide-eyed, soaking it all in. He loved the old legends and heroic tales. Every story made his imagination run wild. At age 7, William started school. It wasn't a fancy place, just a small wooden building with hard benches and a very strict teacher. But what he learned there, that would shape his whole future. He studied Latin, poetry, history, and literature. Latin especially was important. It was the language of the educated, and William became pretty skilled at it. He read the great works of ancient Rome and Greece. He got to know writers like Plutarch and Virgil. Their stories about power, war, love, honor, they stuck with him. Years later, they'd reappear in his own plays, reimagined through his words. But Shakespeare wasn't just about books. He loved the outdoors. He'd walk through green fields, listen to bird song, watch the river flow. He played with friends, raced through the streets. He was just a regular boy, living a regular life. And yet, deep inside, there was something more: a hunger, a need to understand people, to find the words that captured life's deepest emotions. But life wasn't always smooth. His father, once a respected man, began facing serious financial trouble. Business loans didn't go well, and money got tight. There were days when putting food on the table became a real challenge. William saw it all: the worry in his mother's voice, the stress in his father's eyes. He learned young that life is fragile, that everything — wealth, comfort, status — can disappear overnight. But here's what's amazing: he didn't let that break him. Instead, he absorbed it all. He felt every emotion. He watched how people coped, how they changed under pressure, and all of that, every little struggle, would find its way into his stories later on. Even as a child, William had a gift. He'd make up little poems and rhymes just for fun. He loved acting, playing roles, entertaining anyone who'd listen. But nobody in Stratford-upon-Avon could have guessed that this curious, thoughtful kid would one day write words that would echo through history. Fast forward a few years, he's 14 now. He's read hundreds of books, memorized legends, watched countless street performances. But things at home aren't getting better. His father's business is still sinking. The family that once had a good standing in town was now struggling. William was learning one of life's harshest lessons. Nothing is permanent. Not comfort, not stability, not even happiness. But instead of shutting down, he got sharper, wiser. He kept watching, kept learning. And then everything changed. At 18, William fell in love. Her name was Anne Hathaway, not the actress, obviously, and she was 8 years older than him. In that era, that kind of age gap, especially with the woman being older, was unusual. But love doesn't care about rules. Before they were even married, Anne became pregnant, and in those days, that was scandalous. A child out of wedlock brought shame, not just on the couple, but on both families. So, they acted fast. William and Anne married in November 1582. He was just 18. 6 months later, their first daughter, Susanna, was born. 2 years after that, Anne gave birth to twins, Hamlet and Judith. By 21, William Shakespeare was a husband and father of 3. Life came at him fast. But here's the dilemma. How was he going to support them? His father was still drowning in debt. William had no land, no title, no connections. He didn't want to become a glove maker like his dad. He didn't want the simple life. What he did have was a love for words, a deep passion for stories, and an unshakable drive to create. And so began what historians now call the lost years. The mysterious period from 1585 to 1592, when Shakespeare disappears from all public records. No one knows exactly what he was doing. Some think he became a teacher, maybe working as a tutor in a wealthy household. Others believe he joined a traveling theater company, performing on the road and learning the craft. There's even a legend that he got caught poaching deer on a nobleman's land and had to flee Stratford in a hurry. Whatever the truth was, one thing is clear. By 1592, when he re-emerged in London, he was ready to take on the world. London in the late 1500s was alive, loud, messy, bursting with ideas. It was the heart of England's creative scene, filled with poets, actors, writers, and thinkers. Everyone came here chasing one thing, a chance to be remembered. And into this whirlwind came William Shakespeare. No fame, no fortune, no friends in high places, just talent, a mind full of stories, and an unstoppable desire to make something of himself. At first, he took on small jobs with theater groups. He worked as an actor, learning everything about performance, how to speak, how to move, how to hold an audience in silence with a single line. But he wasn't content just performing other people's words. He wanted to write his own. He began with light comedies and simple plays, just enough to get people laughing and keep them coming back. But deep down, he knew what he really wanted, to write stories that made people feel, stories that made them reflect on life itself. By 1592, people were starting to notice. Shakespeare's name was buzzing in the theater world, but with fame came criticism. One well-known playwright, Robert Greene, publicly insulted him in a letter. He called Shakespeare an upstart crow, a nobody who was pretending to be something he wasn't. Now, most people might have let that kind of comment crush their confidence, but not Shakespeare. He didn't lash out. He didn't quit. He just kept writing. Not just writing, improving. Then, disaster struck. In 1593, the plague hit London hard. Theaters shut down. Public gatherings were banned. Overnight, Shakespeare lost his primary source of income. While others waited for the city to reopen, Shakespeare shifted to poetry. He wrote 2 long narrative poems, Venus and Adonis and The Rape of Lucrece. They were bold, beautiful, and deeply emotional, and people loved them. Even Queen Elizabeth herself admired his work. Those poems didn't just restore his career, they elevated it. They brought him wealth and recognition in new circles. When the theaters finally reopened in 1594, Shakespeare returned to the stage with even more fire. This time, he joined a professional theater company called the Lord Chamberlain's Men. He wasn't just writing plays for them, he was acting in them too. And this is when the magic really started. He wrote Romeo and Juliet, the ultimate story of young, tragic love. Then A Midsummer Night's Dream, full of enchantment, confusion, and dreams. Then Richard III, about power and ambition. Each play revealed a new side of him, his humor, his darkness, his understanding of the human soul. Audiences were mesmerized. Actors loved performing his lines. Even rival playwrights started respecting him. By the late 1590s, William Shakespeare wasn't just famous, he was the name in English theater. But he wasn't done. In 1599, Shakespeare and his theater company took a giant leap. They built their own theater, a brand new venue called the Globe. Imagine it, a huge circular building with an open roof, packed with people from every walk of life. Rich nobles in balconies, workers standing in the pit. Everyone came for the same reason, to be transported by story. The Globe was more than a theater. It was Shakespeare's dream brought to life, his creative home. And inside it, he created masterpieces. Hamlet, a story of revenge, madness, and the question of existence itself. Othello, a tale of love destroyed by jealousy. Macbeth, about ambition, guilt, and fate. Julius Caesar, a drama of politics, betrayal, and the price of power. These weren't just plays. They were emotional earthquakes, forcing audiences to confront their fears, their hopes, their beliefs. By the early 1600s, Shakespeare was no longer just writing plays. He was shaping English culture, and for the first time in his life, he was also getting rich. Thanks to the Globe and his published works, Shakespeare had become one of the wealthiest playwrights in England. He invested wisely, buying properties, including a large house back in Stratford called New Place. For a man who once watched his family lose everything, this was a powerful turnaround. But wealth and fame weren't his end goal. Shakespeare wanted to leave a legacy, and in 1603, a major event helped him do just that. Queen Elizabeth died, and King James I took the throne. The future of theater was uncertain. Would the new king support the arts or shut them down? Shakespeare didn't have to wonder for long. King James loved his work, so much in fact that he gave Shakespeare's theater company a royal title. They were now called the King's Men. This was the highest honor a playwright could receive. It meant royal protection, royal money, and performances at court for the most powerful people in the country. Shakespeare, the glovemaker's son, was now the personal storyteller of kings. Between 1603 and 1611, he wrote some of his most profound and powerful plays. King Lear, a tragic tale of a father's pride and heartbreak. Macbeth, darker and more intense than ever before. The Tempest, a magical story about forgiveness and letting go. His writing shifted during these years. It became deeper, more personal. He wasn't just writing for applause. He was writing about life, death, redemption, and everything in between. Because Shakespeare was changing. He was getting older. He'd seen success, but also betrayal. Wealth, but also sorrow. His plays reflected that journey. They weren't just entertainment, they were philosophy and poetry. By 1611, William Shakespeare had achieved everything he once dreamed of and more. He was famous across the country. His plays were performed constantly. He was wealthy, honored, and loved by audiences and royalty alike. But despite all that, something pulled at him. Home. After decades in London, Shakespeare did something unexpected. He retired. He left the stage, left the city, left the spotlight. He returned to Stratford, to his family, to his roots. Back in Stratford, Shakespeare moved into his grand house, New Place. It was peaceful there. Quiet streets, open fields, the river he'd played by as a child. And after years of noise, applause, and city life, he welcomed the silence. Each day, he'd wake early, walk through his garden, and reflect. He'd spend hours reading, thinking, and talking with his daughters, Susanna and Judith. about life, love, and the future. Sometimes friends from London would visit, asking him for advice on plays or poems. But Shakespeare, though retired, never really left the world of stories. His mind was always alive with words. Even in his final years, he was often seen sitting alone, staring out a window or pacing slowly through the garden, whispering lines of poetry under his breath. Then, in 1616, something unexpected happened. Shakespeare attended a dinner with some close friends. It was a joyful evening, good food, laughter, warm company. But not long after, he fell ill. Some say it was a fever. Others believe it was something more serious, maybe even pneumonia. Whatever it was, it came fast. Within days, his condition worsened. Family and friends gathered at his side. They knew the end was near. On April 23, 1616, his 52nd birthday, William Shakespeare took his final breath. The world had lost a genius. But his words, they didn't die. Before his death, Shakespeare had one last thing to say. He wrote an epitaph, short poem, for his own tombstone. It was a warning to anyone who might disturb his grave. Good friend, for Jesus' sake forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. Even in death, his language had power. When news of his passing reached the town, Stratford went quiet. People filled the Holy Trinity Church, the same church where he was baptized as a baby, to say goodbye. There were no gold statues, no massive monuments, just a simple grave, marked by his own words. And yet, that quiet farewell was only the beginning of something greater. Shakespeare's body may have been laid to rest, but his voice, his thoughts, his wisdom, his poetry was only just beginning its journey. In the years that followed, his plays continued to be performed. His books were printed and passed from hand to hand. His name spread across Europe, then the world. Decades passed, then centuries, and still, his words lived on. Today, over 400 years later, Shakespeare is everywhere. His works are studied in schools and universities. His plays are staged in theaters across the globe. His lines show up in movies, speeches, music, even memes. Why? Because he understood people. He didn't just write about kings and battles. He wrote about jealousy, desire, fear, betrayal, forgiveness, things that still shape our lives today. Romeo and Juliet showed us how love can be beautiful, but also tragic. Macbeth warned us about what unchecked ambition can do. Julius Caesar revealed how betrayal often comes from those we trust most. Hamlet asked questions we still wrestle with. What's the point of life? Why do we suffer? How do we know what's real? His stories aren't old, they're eternal. And the language? Oh, the language. Even if you don't realize it, you've probably quoted Shakespeare. Ever heard the phrase, to be or not to be? That's him. All the world's a stage? Him again. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet? Yep, Shakespeare. He added thousands of words and phrases to the English language, and his influence helped shape modern English itself. But perhaps the most powerful part of his story is this. William Shakespeare was not born into greatness. He wasn't rich. He had no noble title. He didn't go to a fancy school. In fact, he likely never traveled outside of England. He was a boy from a small town, a kid who watched, listened, and dreamed. Now, maybe you're watching this video and thinking, I'm not special, I don't have money or connections, I'm just trying to figure things out. Good. That means you're exactly where Shakespeare once was. Maybe your dream is to be a writer, or an actor, a speaker, a leader, a creator, someone who makes something that matters. But maybe you're scared. Maybe people doubt you. Maybe you doubt you. Let me tell you something real. Shakespeare was just like you. He started small, unknown, uncertain, but he had a voice, and he used it. And now, his name lives forever. You have that same power. You have ideas, stories, thoughts, feelings that no one else on earth can express like you can. You don't need to wait for someone to discover you. You can start now with what you have, where you are. That dream you're holding on to, it's real and it's worth chasing. So don't let fear stop you. Don't let anyone tell you that you're not enough. Because the truth is, you're more than enough. You're one idea, one brave moment, one step away from changing your life forever. My amazing friends, chase that dream. Today, not tomorrow, not next week, now. Start writing, start creating, start believing. And maybe, just maybe, like Shakespeare, your name will be remembered. If this story moved you, even a little, like this video, so I know you felt the power in it, leave a comment below. What's your dream? Let's inspire each other. Let's build a community of dreamers who refuse to quit. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Because we're not just telling stories here, we're growing, we're learning, and we're becoming unstoppable together. Your future is waiting. Go make history. And remember, it is not in the stars to hold our destiny, but in ourselves. William Shakespeare. Maybe the next great storyteller is you. See you in the next video. Stay inspired. Stay unstoppable.